All right, and welcome to Association Chat, your online discussion for the association community where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with the topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italian, and before we get started, I just want to say thank you to the Association Chat Patreon patrons, the supporters of Association Chat. It takes so many hours and blood, sweat, and tears, and lots of technology to make all of this come together, and you help make it happen. So thank you. And if you ever are thinking about joining and becoming an Association Chat Patreon patron, please consider doing so, and I will be thanking you just as much. All right, so today we have a very special guest. We are talking with Tracy Stuckrath, and she is the dietary needs expert. She is the meetings industry changemaker. She is a certified special events professional. She's a friend of mine. She's also the CEO of Thrive Meetings and Events. It's a full service event and culinary consulting firm that works with meeting planners and food service providers to create safe and healthy food and beverage experiences. Now, listen, Tracy is also someone that you need to know when you want to know how to include food in your events, when you don't want people to get sick, when you want them to feel included, when you want them to feel cared for, special, to take your events to another level. And especially today, we need to be thinking about how can we go ahead and organize these events in person, virtual, hybrid, and figure out how to do all of this in this new reality that we're in. You know, with COVID-19, health concerns are so much in the forefront of everyone's minds that we have to be asking many questions that we maybe have never been in the position to ask before. So what do we need to know about? That's what Tracy's here to talk with us about. Tracy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kiki. I'm excited.
I am too. And now you have your own special podcast. You're just talking to me about it too. So I feel like, we've got the podcast flow going on. You've got your own. What's the name of your podcast?
It's called Eating at a Meeting.
Eating at a Meeting. That's so brilliant. I love that idea.
Oh, I have to actually give credit to this videographer I was filming my promo for my speaking, and he was listening to me. And at the end of it, he's like, Tracy, you are all things that are eating at a meeting. And I'm like, oh,
that's so good.
So when I make millions, I'm going to send him a check.
I mean, it's such a great idea. I love that. That's such an awesome title. Yeah. Okay. So kind of lately, I've been starting out the same with everyone, because here's the deal. When 2020 started, whether you had your vision board made or not, none of us planned, I don't think, on it turning out the way that it has. So 2020, it's been a ride, hasn't it? How are things now compared to what you thought that they would be?
Oh, wow. I mean, actually, I was at an event the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of January speaking, talking about dietary restrictions and food allergies and how to plan for them. And then I was working the national championship football game. So I was like, okay, all of this is good and we're on a roll. It's just starting out. And for the month of March, every month on my podcast, or not on my podcast, but on my blog, I pick a topic that I want to focus on. And for March this year, I decided that I wanted to focus on women who are doing really cool things in food and beverage. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to a couple of friends of mine, and we put together this list, and Sue Pelletier and I interviewed a ton of people and did this. And we were crying. We were like in awe of these women. Like, one farmer was in the Coast Guard, got Lyme disease just before she went back on duty, and it destroyed her body. And now she and her husband run a farm in California that only grows heirloom vegetables, because that's the only thing her body can process now.
Wow.
And she's created CSA boxes, community supported agriculture boxes, that are specific towards different dietary needs. and like celiac and fibromyalgia and a variety of other things. So it was just, and her story to get there was just really inspiring. So that to me actually has helped, you know, because I started that in March, and I'm like, pandemic, what pandemic, right? So,
Well,
I mean, yeah, I mean, I lost a lot of speaking gigs, but I've done quite a few virtual webinars since then. And I've actually been, like you, interviewing individuals on a weekly basis in the Eating It. I actually created a Facebook group, and I'm learning a lot from you. So thank you for podcasting and the Facebook group. So I'm learning a lot from you. Eating at a meeting, and just to bring people together to talk about this.
I think it's so important. I mean, what I love about you is that once you discovered this passion, you were on it. You were sharing everything that you learned. You had this drive to just go out and really help people live better lives. And I love that you saw the meetings industry as being an avenue for reaching more and more people, to make them feel included, and to really to if you think about it, when you show love, around a table or anything like that, oftentimes, we're feeding people that we love the foods to show that we love them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're feeding your guests, you want to make sure that they're healthy, that they feel cared for. And so you've always had this connection between health and providing this sense of belonging for meetings that I think has been so important. Now it's life or death, really. Like now, and I guess it always has been, but now it's amplified because we're dealing with this truly, this virus that is sort of mysterious, and we don't know for a long time whether we're going to get sick from it, as opposed to getting sick from it like right away. And so there's so much fear. What are you hearing from people about how this is impacting the food and beverage choices and some of the things that is coming across for meetings and events?
Well, it comes from a bunch of different angles. So when you join the Eating in a Meeting Facebook group, I ask you two questions. What are your biggest challenges? And what do you want to learn about food and beverage? And the challenges, and for answers to both, are food allergies and what to do with COVID.
Yeah.
So that's what they're wanting to know on that. But one of the webinars that I did was for Exhibitor Magazine. And I asked the question at the beginning. I said, how many of you have ever asked about food safety to your catering partners prior to COVID? And 71% of them had said never.
Yeah.
And I've been speaking for 10 years on food allergies, and that's what I focused on. It's always has been a part of food safety, but it's been like I've kept it on that lower level. Now it's exasperated it. And while COVID can't be passed through food and beverage, it is on those tongs that we always use, or it's, going through that buffet and you and I are standing too close and I sneeze on you, or, and you think about buffets. When you go through a buffet at a big hotel, there's a sneeze guard, right? You go through a buffet at an event buffet and there's no sneeze guard, right? So it's added a lot more concern and, oh my gosh, what do we do? How do we do this? And so I don't mean to be snotty or whatever about it, but I love the fact that food safety is now at a higher level.
Right.
And I was telling somebody the other day, in one of my presentations a couple of years ago, I put a plate as the slide, and then on my slide it was animated, and all these words started dropping down on what meeting planners have on their plate. And this is what you handle. And it's a spider web of variety of things. And I'm a planner, so I understand. But we've got this big drop. Oh, that's a really good animation to add. That's a big drop now of what food safety is and what COVID has done. And it's kind of scattered things around on that plate, because of, and I don't like using social distancing, so I'm going to say physical distancing. because an event is to be social. So physically distancing, how do you do that? And I think that's the biggest concern. And one of the things that I add is saying you have to ask your catering partners questions. And now I got, food service people going, how do I answer those questions? Why are you asking me all these questions, right? And yeah.
Wow. It's almost as if you need to provide them with the questions to ask and the answers that they need to give then to the food preparers and I guess the caterers, because you want to make sure that everyone's being as safe as they can. When you and I, and it was months ago, we had this discussion, we were talking on the phone and you mentioned to me about something I hadn't even really considered. And that was when more in-person events start happening, what about staffing? What about how are they going to deal with this when so many people are being let go and furloughed and having to find other things?
Yep.
Is it still, this was, I think, a few months ago when we talked about that. So is it still like that? Do you still see things that way, or is it getting worse? What is happening as far as, because if I'm thinking about having an event, I'm not even thinking about, will there be people to help serve? Will they have trouble finding? And how will that impact what I'm charged?
Yep. And it is. I've talked to a couple of people. Probably a lot of you saw this story. Georgia Society of Association Executives just did their event in Savannah, and it was definitely extra staffing to having the people. And she's like, it's a school lunch. Instead of you going through and filling your plate up, it's the lunch lady filling your plate up. And I use it as a Chipotle. Think like you're going through a Chipotle line and passing it down. But you need staff for that. And if you're going to have extra bars because you need to spread, you can't have the long line of the bars. That's an extra bartender. And and then if you're really diligent and want the tables cleaned or the linens flipped out between each session, one, that's more linens that you need, and two, that's more labor to get it done. And I remember doing an event in Vegas last summer, 19, and I needed to flip the room in an hour, or no, under 4 hours. And that hotel was charging me labor to flip it in under 4 hours, whatever. But that's going to happen now. And you have to take that into consideration. And so, but it is another struggle on, are they going to have the staff to get there? Because some of the staff are scared. Do I want to be in an environment where there are people that could potentially sneeze on me or give me COVID, and this is my job that I need to feed my family with? So they're a frontline worker in that essence. And so putting them out there. And so we need to be cognizant of that. And we can't say, hey, we need 10 extra people to do this, do it, right? So I think it's a give and take on the planner and the suppliers positioning. And I did hear from one planner that the hotel that she used, they were like, we have no inside catering staff right now, so bring food from outside.
And they just flat out said that. I mean, right.
So that's, doing takeout, are using an outside caterer. And so to me that, with all of our contracting of hotels, I'm hoping they're going to be a little bit more lenient on that, but how are they managing those contract clauses? And because I know a lot of people bring in caterers for kosher and things like that, but what are they going to do? How are they going to manage that? So,
is that part of when you advise people, it's how to set up their contracts in the first place so that things like that are covered? Is that part of what you do with folks?
Okay. I can definitely help with that, because it's figuring out, what is that responsibility, because some caterers or some hotels will say, or convention centers, we don't do that, but we work with these XYZ companies. And so hopefully they've got the partners with those catering companies outside already and managing that. But what part of the other contracting part is asking your food and beverage partners, and these are the questions that I want planners to ask, is what is your health inspection score? Mm-hmm. And how many people on your team have food handler certifications? And how many of them have gone through allergy training through ServSafe or other organizations? And putting that into your contract. And then also saying, if I tell you that I've got dietary needs, you're taking full responsibility to ensure those dietary needs are met. And so there's contract clauses that I've worked with my friend Tyra Hilliard, on, and making sure that it's safe it's not safe. It's a win-win for both the property and the planner, but it's putting those precautions and that necessary information in there.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that, and you mentioned it before, but I think it's worth repeating that it's not like food safety was never important. Like it's always been super important. And you, in one of your talks, you talk about, the facts and figures around it, which it's basically like, I forget what it is, like every certain amount of minutes.
Every 3 minutes, somebody goes to the emergency room with a food allergy reaction.
Right. That's just crazy. And if you think about the ability to make sure that doesn't happen at your event, or to try to make sure that people feel safe, everyone can identify. If you've ever been on a diet, you can identify with worrying about if you can find the right kind of thing to suit your dietary needs. Can you imagine if it were life or death? Can you imagine if you had a legit food allergy that meant that you might be one of those people in the emergency room if that information were wrong? And, I think that we always kind of, if we don't suffer from something like that, we tend to gloss over it like it's sort of somebody else's problem. I'm sure someone's taking care of it and they'll be fine. But now I feel like in solving a lot of the questions for making sure that things are cleaner and safer for COVID, it's probably also bringing to light the ability to make things safer for everyone.
I would hope so. I mean, it is shedding a bigger light on this safety, and planners have always had a duty of care, and adding that duty of care to the food and beverage. And what has kind of blown my mind in one way is that, and I looked this statistic up the other day, but we spend just in the US, meeting planners spend close to $55 billion a year on food and beverage.
Wow.
But I betcha that 95% of them spend the least amount of time in ordering the food and beverage. And because we're like picking the menu or saying chef, or, just design us something fun and cool or whatever, or this is our budget and make it work, and not really thinking about how to incorporate the different dietary needs into that overall menu. So you don't have a gazillion extra plates and you're pulling your hair out. And I did an event earlier this year, 600 attendees, 200 dietary needs.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And thankfully 100 of them were vegan, vegetarian, with a few additions to those. But we worked with it, and my client wanted all the vegans and vegetarians to walk through the main buffet. She didn't want them to go off to another area to get their food. She wanted, and the property was like, you want us to put all the vegan food on the main buffet? And we're like, yeah, because everybody can eat it.
Yeah,
right. I mean, unless it's, got breadcrumbs or something in it, right? For the most part, you can eat. Everybody eats when you eat an apple, you're eating vegan, just so you know. Yeah. But it is, and it just takes me back. This morning, I was chatting with the lady who does speaking on leadership and things, but she said to me, she's like, I started out working kitchens at Disney, and Disney's got a great platform for meeting food allergies and things. But she's like, when they tell you that, it's scary. I am now responsible for making food for this person, this kid who's coming to Disney World for the very first time. And if I screw this up, they could die.
Yeah.
And so it's a serious thing that everybody in that food chain needs to take into consideration.
So let's talk about the opportunities. So let's
Mhm.
talk about, for those people who are planning some of these virtual events,
Mhm.
that they want to incorporate the feel, the vibe of food, having food and beverage, but they don't know what they should do. And I've seen so many questions like this on
Mhm.
association chat in the private group, where people are asking questions like, have you tried Uber Eats for your
Mhm.
attendees? Have you
Yep.
tried this? Have you tried that? Have you come across some great ideas for people, things that work, that make that for food and beverage, it really seems to make a virtual event stand out?
Um, I don't think right now there's an end all be all of which one is great. Using the Uber Eats and the Grubhubs and the Door Dashes of the world, I think, are going to be the most universal way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
My one challenge with that though is, like, I participated in an event and they used Grubhub.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I downloaded the app because I wasn't using it. Well, Grubhub's not in my area.
Oh,
They
yeah.
created an account and given me $15 worth of credit to utilize, but I then had to text my nieces and nephews saying, first one to respond gets $15 for lunch, But so that, looking at that, and that's going to take some, if you got a lot of people you're sending food to, that's going to take a lot of extra effort, which I can help you with, but that's a lot of effort. But I love the cooking demos, and I got a question in eating at a meeting, the private group too, is like, how do I do a coffee demo? Right? What's
Yeah.
the best way? So I'm working on putting that together. In my part-time work, when I was in Atlanta, I worked for the Cook's Warehouse, where I was a chef assistant and planned the chef culinary events there. So I have a slew of chefs that I'm working with, and I actually just found one of my bosses there works for a company called Hungry, and I haven't checked it out yet, or haven't tried it myself, but they are doing meal kit deliveries to people's homes, and you get a celebrity chef doing a cooking demo with the team.
How
And
cool
so,
is that?
yeah,
That's so
so I
cool.
love that idea. And so they're drop shipping all the products except for like the chicken and the beef or whatever. And then a celebrity chef from the Food Network or something like that is going to come on and do a demo. So I
That's
love
so
that concept. My one challenge to her and to all of you listening is that, and this is a little legal aspect, I called my friend Jim, who's an employment attorney in Atlanta, and I'm like, okay, we're sending food home to these people. And that to me is an added risk to anyone doing that, because Kiki, I don't know, does your husband or your daughter have any food allergies?
Yeah.
Or, and so what Jim said to me, because I wanted to make sure I was talking to a lawyer, he's like, whoever's sending it home should have the expectation that Kiki's not the only one going to be eating that food.
Mm-hmm.
So you also, you still, unless you're using something that they can go and order the food themselves,
Mm-hmm.
you need to be asking the dietary needs of not only the attendee, but who's in the house.
So, okay. So I'm going to try to use this and apply it to an example that I've been a part of. So I spoke at the Virginia Society of Association Executives meeting. I was supposed to be there in person. It became a virtual meeting, as many of them have, And they did this wonderful thing. They sent this gift ahead of time, and it was from where they were going to have the meeting in Charlottesville. It was from this local cookie place, and it was from another local place, and they sent like little goodies, and it was so cool. And I think I remember, before, in the very beginning, when I was filling out information, I was saying whether I had a food allergy or not, so they would have had that covered there. But what you're saying is maybe we need to think about in the very beginning, if we're talking about the possibility of that food going home, that at that point, people should have the option to say whether somebody in their household has a food allergy, if there's anything to be mailed there.
Yep.
So that might be one of those opportunities in the very beginning with speakers or whomever to say, yeah, somebody in my household has a food allergy.
Yeah. And disclose that, hey, we're asking if you have food allergies because we're going to send food home to your house.
Right.
We want to make sure, because what if there were peanut flours used in that cookie or peanut butter chips, right? And your kid, not knowing that that was in there, took a bite and of that cookie. And I don't want to be morbid about it, but I posted a story the other day about this teacher in France who was just sentenced to manslaughter with with it, whatever, it was pushed off so she doesn't have to serve, I guess. I don't know what the term is, but anyways, they went to a fair or festival and they came back to help celebrate, tying the festival together with the food. They had pancakes, and this little boy said, hey, I eat pancakes at home. And the teacher knew he had, in the States, it's called a 504 plan, and that he was allergic to milk. Well, she didn't double check that, and little did he know, nor she know, that his mom makes his pancakes with milk or with water and not milk.
Yeah.
And this little boy died. And I
oh my God, that's heartbreaking.
Exactly. So she was charged with manslaughter, found guilty of manslaughter. And she's like, well, I didn't realize. And the judge is like, sorry, you had the information there. So, and I only say that as a precaution. And I don't want you to not send food home to people. I want you to put the steps in place that ensures a safe environment, even whether you're virtual or you're at home.
Right.
Or you're on site. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I have heard people, I think people understand that there might be an issue with sending like wine or something to somebody's house, that could run into some legal issues. But you might not think that there's anything wrong with just, sending some treats. And, because you share a home with other people oftentimes, you don't know if there are other people, that you're caring for your elderly parents or something and they have allergies. You just don't know. So
I was just going to say too, it's in that you don't know what that situation is. And that then has wasted your money. I mean, not discounting the potential harm, but you're wasting your money as well. And you've shown that you haven't done your research, and it may be hard for, if you're doing it for 3,000 people, right? Figuring that all out. But even the alcohol that you just mentioned. So say you're going to send wine tastings. What if somebody on the team is an alcoholic or is underage, or I mean, if you're sending alcohol, I hope you're asking how old people are. But,
I mean, but it's not funny, but yes.
Right. Who don't drink or who are religious, have a religious practice that they don't drink. So again, you don't want to waste your money, but the kids these days, besides the ones that are doing wine, but the cocktails, you can do them as mocktails. And so making sure that you have that mocktail version of what you're doing so that I can still have that participation in it.
And with that, shouldn't you always send like the ingredients and things like that so that people just can always go through and say, can I have this thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And people knock on the door and say, okay, I can't eat this, to the neighbor and give it to them. But it's another thing dribbling down on your plate. But it's a way to create an inclusion environment. And okay, one other example, I was talking to another friend of mine who was she participated in an event, and one of her colleagues is gluten-free, and they were doing this, they were making something bread-like, and they sent this other woman the gluten-free flour. Well, the chef had not tested his recipe with the gluten-free flour. So everybody else was showing off their accomplishment, and this girl's is just sitting. And so making sure that your recipes are tested for, and you can do these cooking demos and do substitutions quite easily probably, but we need to make sure that you can easily switch out salmon for chicken and vice versa, but for a majority of things. But
so what are some of the other tough questions that you're hearing from people about food and beverage in the year 2020 and 2021 as we look into going into the next year? I imagine a lot of it might have to do with budgeting, but But is there anything else? And what about budgeting have you been hearing?
My biggest thing on budgeting right now is paying attention to our food system. Because if you remember seeing back in when this was first starting to happen, you were seeing farmers pouring the milk into the ground and retilling the potatoes in there. So farmers right now, when they're switching their crops and growing, they're probably, we're a little bit more optimistic in the spring that this was going to end, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not ending right now. So what is their growing process? And are they actually going to grow as much as they were growing last year, or the projections that they had for potential orders? And so I think looking at that's going to raise our costs. And even if you go to your own grocery store, have you paid attention to how much your bill has increased since COVID? Like my mom noticed the other day, the price of eggs has increased, and looking at a variety of different things that way. And then, we had the meat shortage for a while. What is that going to be like? So I think looking and working with your catering partners on finding truly what's in season in that region will help, because depending on the size of your meetings, and we all know they're going to be smaller right now, you can probably get the food from a local farmer versus a big conglomerate farm. So that might help or balance it out. And looking at your budgets, are you going to have fewer people than what you originally projected? So maybe paying for some of these PPE and additional staff can balance out that budget for you. That's going to be a conversation that you seriously have to have with your catering partners. But then just going for meeting again is the space.
Mm-hmm.
GSAE, Kavanaugh said, we had 113 people, but we were in a big ballroom, so
Right.
What does that mean? And you have to figure out the egress, the entrance, and the exit. So do you want everybody walking in and about into the same room? And they staggered their breakout sessions to come in. And one really cool idea that I loved for her that they did is that they had buffet stations set up around. They were all plexiglassed, but they did different colored linens on the table. So they had red, white, and blue linens. And so the red tables went to one buffet, the white tables went to another buffet, and the blue tables went to another. They all have the same food, but it just helps spread it out without having to really think about looking at your badge or whatever. You just looked at your linen color.
Yeah, there was a lot about the way that they did that, she sent sort of a summary of the way that they did everything. And I posted it on associationchat.com, and along with some pictures that she sent.
Yep.
And it just looked like a blast. It just looked like they still managed to have a great time, because a lot of times we hear all of these different, you're prohibited from doing this. You can't be super close. Hugs don't exist anymore, and all of this other stuff. And you think, well, what's the point? What's the point of showing up in person? Right. But what I saw from Wendy and GSAE's experience was that you can have an in-person event, have it be safe, and have it be fun, and where people really get something out of being there. And I have to say, that's the first one that I've seen since all of this really hit where I thought, wow, I had a little FOMO. Like I really wanted to be there. I thought, oh, this looks really cool. Yeah. And I feel like it would have been safe. But I think so many people are just, trying to evaluate how safe are people going to be, and are they taking these things seriously? And that's why I think our discussion is so important, Tracy, because I think that, certainly the way that food is handled is on everyone's mind. Anyone who's had their groceries delivered or they've ordered out and they've thought, am I really being as safe as I should be? Who prepared my food? Were they safe? How do I know? And that doubt, it becomes a trust issue.
It really does. And it opens up the conversation for being more transparent. And that's what food allergies is all about, is I want you to be transparent about what you're serving. I don't need you to tell me every single little freaking ingredient in the recipe, but I want you to tell the dietary needs, of the people who are here. Yeah. Being forthcoming with that, and being, open about how you're prepping it and who's trained. And it just adds a sense of security and comfort. And I belong here because they're caring about me. And they took the time to do these things to show that they do care about me. And I just think that when we're thinking strategically about our events going forward, that actually that has to be a big part of it. And I know that I think I'm pretty confident that everybody's thinking that way, but we have to do that even more so with the food and beverage we're serving, because it is the one thing that we all share and we all have in common. And we said it before we started, is like, sitting down at a table, whether it's your family or your coworkers or your colleagues in this industry, sitting down and having a drink and sharing a meal together bonds you even more.
Mm-hmm. It definitely does. I've been thinking about, well, what's the safest way? Can you still have fun? Can you still have fun with food and beverage if things are so scary with a pandemic going on? Is it just easier and safer for everyone to have individually packaged, the brown bag sort of thing? And if you're going to do something like individually packaged items, is there a cool way to do that so that it's more fun for people? What do you have to say about that?
I totally think you could have fun with it. I mean, just like Wendy did with the table linens, you could have fun with, let's think about, and this is just coming in my head right now, but we've got the USDA plate, right? You need proteins, your vegetables, do those color coordinated on your buffet stations. And I just leaned forward and pulled this sticker for my university, but it's supposed to go on the window of my car, right?
Yeah.
But these could go on the plexiglass walls that are going in front of the food, right? So it could be a sticker that says, brought to you by Association Chat.
Yeah.
And here are the dietary needs for this. Here are the food allergies for this meal. Or who's the chef? Who's the person behind it all serving you? Having fun with that kind of stuff. But the box lunches and the bags and that comes down to budgeting. You really have to figure out, be good on your numbers too, because you don't want, I did an event years ago and we had probably 1,000 extra bags, and we're not going to have that many meals, I don't think, anytime soon. But can you have a couple of the catering websites are doing really fun. I see pictures of bento boxes and they're finding very creative ways to do with ribbon and stickers and, fun things like that to incorporate it. I just thought about this. This is a table tent that I design for clients, but it's, I don't know. So checking
off. See if I can, let me try to blow that up a little bit.
Oh,
look at that.
So,
all right.
Checking off what is in this meal. Where's my camera? Checking off what's in here, right? And vegan and that should actually say gluten-free, not gluten-friendly. But you could put that as a sticker on the outside of your box.
That's so cool. I love that.
This is what's in here. And hey, Tracy, it's really clear and easy for somebody to understand. A variety but I think you definitely can have fun. And if we're doing action stations, which I think we should still do action stations, just be cognizant that it might take 2 people versus 1 person as the action station thing. But, what can you do with the food and beverage? Tapas is probably going to be a good way to go this go around. If you're doing seated and served, can you have fun with the plate covers? Get those branded, get those sponsored, right? The plate covers are now sponsored by Association Chat or Eating at a Meeting, right? And put a sticker on there, something like that. I definitely think have fun with it for sure.
See, I think that's such a great opportunity because we're looking for fun. We need it. We just need to feel that we're safe when we're having it, And so I think whether we're getting things at home or whether we're getting things in person, I have also been thinking about that's important. Let me finish my statement. I also think about the hybrid opportunities and how, because that concept of eating at the same table can be such an appealing way to feel like you belong as part of a family or part of a group, that, how is there an opportunity maybe to creatively look at that and say, maybe everyone's having the same dessert, maybe like the people at home and the people in person, or how is there a way to make it so that there could be unity is the word that comes to mind. Yep. It's not the best word, but that there could be this sort of unifying experience with food in a hybrid event. Have you seen or heard of anything like that? I know we're in kind of crazy times, so I don't know that is out there, but.
Well, and I don't know how this could totally work, but thinking of Iron Chef, and I used to teach kids cooking camp in Atlanta at the Cook's Warehouse, and it was a week-long camp, and on Thursdays, it was Iron Chef competition. And so each of the teams, and we had 3 to 4 teams, they had to create something for these Atlanta chefs to come in and judge them. And so you could do the same thing if you're using Zoom. And I have, this is just popping into my head right now, but you could do breakout groups, right? And each of the groups has to come up with a recipe a little bit. I mean, it would take a little bit of pre-planning, but and then the judges are not necessarily tasting the food. I guess they could have their attendees taste it and, oh my God, I hate this, and see the expressions on their face. But the judges could judge them on creativity, the use of ingredients, the use of equipment, kind of fun things like that. But do it in breakout groups, and then they all come together. So they could eat their meal because you can use Zoom and use the breakout rooms. Each room is a different breakout, and they have this and bring that together and have dinner together at the end. I don't know. But I think the cooking demos are a good idea. The cocktails, pairing wine or tea with food, teaching them something that they can also do at home would be really good too. I was, I'll be quiet in a second. I was listening to a different podcast just before I got on, our conversation before I got on, but it was about it was from the Partnership of Food Safety. And they've just come out with a new guidebook on what food safety means in the household. So everybody, do not wash your chicken. You should not wash raw chicken. You should just take it out of the package and cook it. Because when you wash raw chicken, it spreads that rawness all over your sink.
Oh man, so I wish I would have known that years ago.
Yeah.
So we're not supposed to wash the raw chicken?
No, you're not, because it spreads. And one of Ben Chapman from NC State, my alumni, he's food safety expert. He talks about this on one of my podcast episodes. But and he's got a thing at NC State where he brings in people, general consumers, and he watches their movements when he gives them a recipe to see what their safety practices are. And that's what the Partnership for Food Safety has done as well. And I'll send you that link to their guidebook on what food safety is in the home. And I think this is also a prime time to teach that.
That's such a good point. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I immediately had cutting board fear of I'm sure that I am guilty of many travesties with my cutting board. So, and then Aaron Hall says, my mind is blown over the washing of the raw chicken situation. I know. Can we just talk about that for a second? Because seriously, like that, Aaron, you're not alone. I every single time I'm like, oh, this is sitting in its goo. Let me please wash it. And and I think I'm doing a good thing. And then lo and behold, I'm probably doing something very dangerous.
Right. I will find that.
43, this is the kind of danger I have now, but I don't I think food safety is, we can learn internally, or not internally, but we can learn for home, but we can also learn for our events elsewhere. It is the goo. That is for sure. It's the goo.
And then the chicken, the ribbing. I always cut that ribbing off.
Me too. Yeah,
that's fine. That's okay. Just
good. Yeah.
But the other thing from cooking school is you should bleach that cutting board that you're using, or put it in the dishwasher. Just don't wash it unless your water gets super hot, like a hotel hot thing is. Put it in the dishwasher and wash that cutting board.
Okay. All right. I try to use a different cutting board for the meat and then the vegetables and everything. But I have to say that I have certain knives that I like to use more, and how well they get washed in between and stuff. Like when I'm really fast and I'm moving back, but I don't know. I'm making no promises. I'm just saying that I imagine I might get fined or some kind of like demerit if somebody watched me with my kitchen cooking habits.
Yeah, Ben's not setting up a camera in your house. He's doing it at NC State when people come in. So
we talked a little bit about the planning for, it's probably going to cost a little bit more than you wanted to, or how to like bring down your budget in preparation for meetings in person, looking at 2021. What are some other big questions that event planners need to be asking themselves as they're looking at their contracts and setting up for 2021 for food and bev?
Yeah, for food and bev, it's the spacing, and especially since we're going into the fall. I don't know about you, but the temperature dropped a lot from last week to this week.
Yes. When I say at the beginning, like, this is association chat where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire, I'm like, and really we need one today because it's a little chilly. Yeah.
And when I walk into this morning, I'm like, oh, it's a bit nippy out here. But all those events that they're saying, have events outdoors. Well, we're getting to the point where we're not going to be able to do that. So you are going to need to really look at your space that you have, and will it fit? Will your group fit? And I think really surveying your attendees now to saying, hey, what's your comfortableness, if that's a word, of coming in person, so that you can figure out, do I need to switch hotels, or do I need more space in that hotel to spread everything out? So I think it's definitely a space conversation to have. And I know right now, finding your partners on the properties is a little bit harder. So I think starting that conversation now going forward, is really important, because it's going to be harder and harder. And we're going to be vying, unfortunately, as properties close, we're all going to be vying for the same properties to get the bigger space.
Right.
So we did have a problem before, we're going to have a bigger problem now. And so I think that with the food and beverage, somebody joked, I can't go back a house anymore. I'm like, yeah, don't expect to be able to go into the back of the house and check up on anything that's food and beverage wise. But I think, and at Kiki, and maybe I'll cheat and go find my checklist, but there's a checklist that I have on food safety. There's 2 versions of it that was on Successful Meetings magazine.
Actually, yeah.
So there's one that I did this month, or this year, I should say, and one that I did last year. So they bounce off of each other. And I'm looking at my computer, so trying to find it real quick.
If you get those, what I'll do is I'll also put those for people who are listening to this later. I'm going to put those in the comments where these live streams are happening. So you'll get those links. And then if you're listening to this on the podcast later, the audio podcast later, I will put those in the show notes. Okay. And
I just sent you that one link. Oops.
Got it.
It's the shorter link, but here's the full link.
Okay.
Hang on. Let me go back over here. Here's the full link. That's the one that I did this year. And then I'll also give you the one that I did last year as well. And my friends, Caroline and Terry, are like, Tracy, okay, these are great questions, but what are the answers to the questions?
Right.
What answers should I be expecting to get?
And that's where you say, that's where I come in.
Exactly. So so those are just good questions to research and know, and ask. One planner reached out to me on the Eating at a Meeting Facebook group and saying, hey, I'm trying to put a food code clause into my contracts. to say, hey, and I posted it. I showed it to a couple of caterers, and one of them was like, "Run, Forrest, run! Stay away from that." So I am going to be doing, a conversation with her, probably within the group as well, to talk about that. And I think because the caterers, like every single caterer said, I'm going to stay away from that, like COVID, and with the 10-foot pole. So I think the solution for planners is to ask these questions that I just posted and come up with questions that you're already asking. And this is at RFP level.
Yeah.
But now if you're already contracted at the contract level, but ask those questions so that they give you the answers, because I think they also need to be prepared. And if you're a hotelier or a catering company, be prepared to answer those questions.
Right.
So that you can, and I would be forthcoming with the answers. Hey, look at what we have for you. Right.
Right.
And it'll make you a better property.
I mean, that is a chance for a a destination to be particularly helpful and to say, I'm a partner in this. I am going to help you with this.
Yep.
So, okay, we are at that time where I have begun in recent weeks to have this little thing that I do where at the end of every interview, I'm asking the podcast guest to answer the question of the week that I ask in the private Facebook group. So Association Chat has a private Facebook group. If you're not on it, you should definitely, I know you're in there, Tracy.
Yeah, but
everybody's
question for this week. So
yeah, well, that's good because you get a chance to answer it now. And the question of the week is this: what is something with which you are obsessed?
Oh, I did answer this question. It's blueberry. I love blueberries.
So you did, and I wanted to ask you in the chat, but I thought I'm going to hold on to that. Why blueberries? Why are you really obsessed? Are you?
I don't know. I mean, it is you could fill my bedroom up with blueberries, and I would eat my way out of them.
Are you serious? Really?
Yeah.
Are there particular kinds of blueberries? Do you have specifics, or is it just like any blueberry anywhere?
Well, no, I don't. I haven't really. I'm for organic blueberries for sure. Okay. And I found a blueberry farm 5 minutes from my house in New Bern, North Carolina. It's actually the farm's in Bridgeton. So I will go buy a flat, and I come home, and that's 12 pints. And they're like, "You're going to eat all those?" And me and my dad will eat them. But I like them to be, bigger and plumper and juicier. And it's reminding me of a dating site where I put the blueberries on my favorite. And this dude and this was like 15 years ago. He was a yoga guru or whatever. He's like, "So what is it about the blueberries that you love?" I'm like, delete. I can't talk to you.
Don't turn this into something it's not. Listen, exactly. do not take the innocence away from my blueberries.
Right. But a real good juicy blueberry is just the bomb.
Yeah. I love that. That's so fun. Do you like blueberry pancakes?
I always have to have blueberries in my pancakes.
Okay. I love blueberry and blueberry muffins. Oh my gosh. I'm getting hungry now.
And blueberry pie and cobbler and yes.
Well, okay. So Tracy, you mentioned it before, but I wanted to give you a chance again to talk a little bit about your podcast. Where can people find you and where can they listen to your podcast?
So the podcast is called Eating at a Meeting, and it is on all podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify, Google, a variety of those. You can also go to eatingatameetingpodcast.com and find them. You will, when you go to that website, you will also be on the Thrive Meetings and Events website as well. So you can find blog posts related to the podcast as well. And the Facebook group is called Eating at a Meeting. It is a private group, but you just have to answer a couple of questions when you join. And I am also, Kiki, as I was talking about the webinars that I've done, I am creating an Eating at a Meeting Academy.
I love that.
Yet, but if you join the meeting Facebook group, I will promise to put it out there, but an academy that is going to take what I teach in the webinars and really expand on it. Those contract clauses, what questions to ask, everything that you probably need to know.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. I think that, I've definitely learned so much more from talking to you. definitely over the years, but then especially today, just finding out a little bit more about how we can make our meetings moving forward safer, and we can also maybe plan a little bit better so that we can have a better event for everyone.
Yeah, and that is my goal. When I first started out on this 10 years ago, I said I wanted to make the world healthier one event at a time. And now it's changed a little bit and says every guest matters and every meal matters. And that's just kind of what I want to make sure everybody understands.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Wasn't Tracy amazing? Oh my gosh. I am so thankful that we had the chance to talk with her. She's just a really fantastic person. So I do encourage you to go and follow her on the socials, follow her on her podcast. And hey, if you really enjoy this, you want to find out more, please make sure that you're on the mailing list for Association Chat at associationchat.com. And until next time, everyone, keep asking questions every day and eating blueberries. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.